we'll get going real soon here. Jason, I'm not sure how long it will go. It depends on how long I talk and how many questions there are. If you need to leave, that's okay. I'm recording the session and I'll have it posted on YouTube later today. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? The recording is already going, so I'll just jump right into it. This week, the news from LibLime basically is the same as it was before. I'd just like to let you know that if you're going to link to the documents, it's a good idea to link from this page. If you try and link from within the software itself, you'll go back to the 5.18 documentation. And you probably don't want to be in the 5.18 if you're looking for the new information. There was no meeting with Patrick this week since ALA was still going on the early part of this week, so I don't have any update from him. I know that there were some pieces that were added to the code shortly before ALA, but I am not aware of what they are at this point in time. Once I find out, I'll send a message out to the mailing list. I know that they changed something to say my dashboard instead of my account, I think. So there will be a few things that you'll see that are not in implementation yet. Okay, the last time that I tried to demonstrate serials for you all, I ran into a few problems, and I've reported those problems to LibLime. So I thought I'd try again today and see how far we get this time. So I'm going to switch over into my Waldo Sandbox and begin by clicking on More and Serials. One of the big differences that you'll see right away when we go into this area of the software is that it looks a lot different than it did before. If you have a stack of issues that you need to check in, you can do a couple of different things. You can search either by ISSN or by title, or you can scroll through the list and find your journals. The problem with scrolling through the list is that it may take a while because unlike the reports, there isn't a no pager option. So I would always recommend at least searching by title because that will bring you directly to the serial record that is in the system for you. Okay. I have to move a few windows around on my screen so I can see what I'm doing. When I go to the Mindful journal title, I get the title. The ISSN will always display how many subscriptions and then what actions that I can take. Now this is one that I just created a little bit ago and I know that it works. So I can go ahead and receive for Waldo testing. The receive part is very easy. You just identify when it was received by selecting the date and then click on receive. So the receiving part of it, I think, is going to be pretty easy for people to get used to. It is going to be a little bit different setting up the records themselves. As in the old serials module, you still have to have a catalog record for your serials if you're going to use them. So I did import a record from somewhere that has the the bibliographic information in it. And I did set up my publication record here just to show you the other pieces of the publication record. I'll click open the chronology and the enumeration section. This first section where it says schedule, chronology, and enumeration, this is where you define how the material comes. If it comes every month, every other month, once a year, twice a year, etc. And when you enter a new journal into the system, it will give you a list of options that you can choose from, and you can then set up your particular information. You'll notice I have my next issue date that is automatically filling in. So each time I receive something, it's going to update my most recent up here, and it will also tell me what my next issue is going to be. The enumeration counters, what I've discovered with this is if you have your enumeration, your chronology and enumeration set up correctly, this usually takes care of itself. Usually what I found is that you have to make sure that your counters are set up correctly. And the way that you read this is that the X is one of the elements of your pattern. And in this case, it's the volume number in the brackets up here. So you add 1 to the count once every 6 times. You do that during the year so that you get your 6 issues of the year. I don't actually know what inner count means or whatever, but what I have identified through my testing so far anyway is that if I choose the right schedule, the right frequency up at the top with the correct chronology and enumeration, I usually don't have to worry about the counters part of it. After you set up your schedule, the system will automatically do a prediction for the next several issues that you would be receiving. So you can look at the predictions section of the publication information to see when the different issues should be coming, or what they should be named in terms of both chronology and enumeration. This is useful if you have to play around with the patterns just a little bit. You'll be able to get the correct thing. Now, before you can receive an issue of any journal title, you need to have a subscription set up. What I discovered the last time that I showed this is that all of the converted subscriptions didn't have any subscriptions set up, and I was having trouble adding them at that time. I think that that is working correctly now. So the way that you would add a subscription is simply to click on Add and then fill in the blanks. And in this case, this would be a new subscription for the same title that I just showed you for Mindful. So I'm going to just assign a different name to this. Let's call it Main Library. Basically, the documentation tells you to put a name in here, someplace where the issue is going to be either shelved or stored in your library, so that there's a way to differentiate the subscriptions if you have more than one. The branch you can select from, let me choose a different one. You can select from the drop-down menu, so if you have multiple branches within your library, you can identify which issues go to which branch. If you want to use the claiming function, you would need to identify a vendor that you would use. And the next thing is that it asks for the start and the expires date. Typically, this is set up whatever your subscription terms are. But what I've noticed in this is if I choose anything other than January 1st and December 31st, I end up running into a few issues with that, and I haven't quite figured out how to change that. Staff note, NOPAC note, act as they did before. If you have data filled in here, it will display either to the staff once a staff member is logged on, or it will be a public note that anyone will see when they look at the bibliographic record. If you typically receive the journal like a week after the publication date, so if this is supposed to come out on the 1st of a month, and I don't receive it until the 7th, you can identify late after days in the record in order to make the claiming process work better. The system would know then after the 8th day is elapsed and you have no journal that it needs to add it to the claim list. So that is something there. I'm going to leave that one blank right now. You can create items each time an issue is received. However, you do not have to do that. So I'm going to unclick that. And if you are also using acquisitions, you can create PO lines for each issue that is received so that it will be collected together on a purchase order that can then be paid whenever you pay your subscription renewal. I'm again going to just click out of that. If you say create items, you can set up item defaults in this next section. And you would choose a field that you're going to have in the item record. And then under the other column, you would choose the default value that you want to put in there. The routing lists do work now. They did not work in the last version very well. And once you fill in those fields, you go ahead and identify it. It tells me that, excuse me, that I now have another expected issue. So now I have 2 expected issues. And if I go back to my publication record, you'll see that I have 2 different subscriptions that are identified here. So if I receive the subscription for the second one at a different time, I'll be able to very easily tell which one it is that I can check in at the time. Okay, so that part of it I think is working pretty well. The part that I think that we might still have a few problems with is just setting up some of the subscription records. So if you're currently using serials in version 5.18, I would highly recommend that you go into your sandbox once your data has been, or once the version has been updated in your sandbox, and work with it. Make sure that you can actually add in information about a title and add a chronology and enumeration set to it, and as well as add a subscription record. If you can do those couple of things, modify the chronology and enumeration and set up a subscription, you should be able to go ahead and receive new issues. Now, because this database in the Waldo Sandbox has not been updated along the way, I just used it when I've needed to do some tests or when I've shown people what the serials module can do. I haven't kept the records in it up to date. So for me, I never know if it's because the data is stale or if it's because the system isn't working. So I try a couple of different things before I send in any support center tickets. But you should be able to actually go through this. There's not a whole lot I can show you about claims at this point. There are no issues that show up on the records because while the patterns, while the subscription records and the patterns were all converted over, it didn't necessarily convert all of the items that have already been received or not received. So those, it will take a little bit of time, I think, for you to get those all taken all updated again and ready for production. So are there any questions about the new serials module? At least I was able to show you. I could now check something in. Okay, let me go back into the agenda then. The sandbox upgrades began on Monday, and as you know, let me find it here. I did send this out to everyone as soon as I got it, and the dates, I believe, are being kept up to date. So today, which is the 28th, we should have all of these first sets of groups already upgraded. So if your library is one of these, please be sure to go into your sandbox and do some testing. If you find any problems, either where you don't understand what you're seeing on the screen, or if something didn't work, or if you receive an error message, be sure to send in a support center ticket on that. Make sure that in your support center ticket that you identify that you're working with the sandbox and that you're working with version 5.20. Okay, and Hartford has already started working on it. Have you found anything, Ben, so far, or your staff, that is something that you'd like to share with everyone? Okay, not right at the moment. Once all of the sandboxes are upgraded, I am pretty certain I will start talking about upgrading your production systems, but I'm going to try and delay that as long as possible to make sure you have plenty of time to do some testing in your sandboxes. I think that that is something that you will want to do, definitely. As long as I'm talking about the upgrades, I thought that I should also update you on what's going on with the code version, the code combination committee. It's going to be meeting tomorrow morning from 9 o'clock Central to noon Central. And there is an agenda that is out and available for that. So the representatives from the Waldo group is me and Ben from University of Hartford and Anne from St. John's University. I think Anne might not be on the call. I don't think that she's been able to be there. But what I am suggesting is that, you know, Ben, if you have some other staff who have interest in hearing what's going on from the other libraries, I would certainly, I would welcome them being there, at least to hear what's being said. The notice came out about 2 weeks ago. I'll forward it to you so that you have it. And I'm going to pull this over here so that you can see what the agenda is. The agenda is, the first question is, what is the status? That will be an interesting piece of information. And then there is a general outline of what pieces are in here. As I look through them, I don't understand what all of these mean at this moment, but what I have noticed that in the support center section that has been set up for the Code Fusion libraries, that there's been an awful lot of support center tickets entered for the discovery layer as opposed to circulation pieces. So it kind of amused me when I saw this, that circulation was at the end, which was basically the big part. that people were expecting. The agenda is very, very broad, so I'm pretty sure we'll go for those 3 hours. I would expect that people will want to see what some of the issues are. So hopefully that will be there. I'm going to ask if they can record the session, because if they can, I can make it available to everyone to at least see what's being discussed. But I won't promise that at the moment. I'll just try and get a copy of it. Okay, the next issue on our list is the enhancement list update. And before I confused you, I'm sure, by telling you that I was working on selecting items, since we had 8 issues basically that were on our enhancement list, John asked me to identify 4 to split them into 2 groups so that we would know, so that we could order some enhancements right away and then in a couple of months order the rest of them. The idea that was in my mind as I went through these is that anything that would affect service to your patrons would probably be the ones that I would select first. So the ones that I have at the top of the list are above the empty line, and include the specific due time and displaying the due time on the display for people, so that it knows, so that when reserve items are checked out, you'll be able to tell not only what day it's due back, but also what time it's due back. The other one that I think would be very, very useful for everyone is when you scan barcodes, that it would automatically trigger a browse count. Right now, you have to actually treat it like a circulation checkout so that you get it tracked on your patron, your stats only patron account. And I think that that will really help, because that pseudo account is always going to be the same one, so it's easier to do that. Any display issues also was included in here. So the 506, that one is going to take, they estimated 6 hours, but I doubt that there will actually be 6 hours worth of work on it. I don't think it will be quite that extensive. And the other one is the dead link. Underneath it, and those I'll gave a priority of 1 with the intent that those are things that I would like to see before school starts, which is not that far away, probably less than 2 months for most of you. And the rest of them that we had selected, I have as the second priority. These are the ones that I am hoping we can get in the queue and also get done before the end of this calendar year. That does include some of the ones that had, it does include adding record 1 of 28 so you can tell where you are in your list of records. Also the back to list button returns to the top of the list. In other words, if you're on page, if you are using paging and you're on page number 8 and you click back, it will take you to page number 1 right now. And that's really a lot of unnecessary navigation. So that's why this particular request is here. And then there are 2 authority pieces that I would like to see done. The other option that Patrick had suggested of adding a couple of other of the enhancements that were on our bigger list is something that we're still considering and looking at. We would like to have other library systems or libraries be willing to pitch in some dollars so we could share the costs on that. Right now, South Central isn't thinking in terms of adding in any enhancements, so they declined. So we're going to keep hoping and trying to have Patrick find us some people who would be willing to go forward with that, because we think it's a good idea to do that. Okay. And my understanding is that John has already ordered the first 4, so that once they have developer time, they'll be able to work on those. I'll hopefully learn more over the next couple of weeks, and the next time we meet, I can give you an update on that, on the status of the enhancement requests. Okay, what I did so far is I have added all of the meetings from this year onto YouTube. I would appreciate it if some of you could click on some of these links to make sure that you actually get a recording. I've looked at them and I think they look okay. I did add tags to each of the videos so that if you are searching, you could search for LAK or Waldo, and in amongst everything else that you will get back for LAK and Waldo, you should be able to find these if you just go to search on YouTube. I would suggest that it'd probably be easier to go to these links because you'll go directly to the actual meeting recording rather than having to dig through different pages and pages of YouTube videos. The recordings are all unedited. I've been looking for a video editor that I might be able to use to compress some of the pauses that I have from different meetings, and also erase some of the ers and ahs and other little vocalizations that disrupt the flow of the talking. But I haven't found one yet, so I thought it would be better to put those out there unedited rather than wait and try and find an editing program that I can use and learn quickly. So those will be there. I'll have today's meeting out there this afternoon yet. It doesn't take long to upload a video, so I'll be able to have those always up to date and identified. So those will they'll stay there as long as we need to have them there. The older videos, the older recordings are still on the wiki site. If you think that there's value in having any of those added into YouTube, let me know, and I'll work at doing that as well. I'm not sure we want to put all of the old ones out here because some of them go back a long time. I mean, we've got recordings back to 2011. I think we probably don't want to go back quite that far. Okay, and then other. I wanted to find out if you had any other questions or comments. I know after I canceled the last meeting in May, that there was, I think it was Columbia Basin had a question that they wanted to ask, and luckily we were able to resolve it via email. But are there any questions that you have, any comments about anything that you've noticed if you're already looking at your sandboxes, or anything else? Okay, the other sites that are involved in the Bibliobation code meeting tomorrow include South Central Library System. Some of their system staff, I imagine that they will have their support staff from their central office involved, as well as a librarian or two. Salina, Kansas Public Library, Pioneer Land, or Pioneer, I think it's just Pioneer. It's a consortium in Nebraska, and CLIC, which is a consortium in California. The other ones, other than us, are all public libraries, and have been using the libline Koha code base, which has been actually undeveloped for many years now. So they are getting a lot of new things that they didn't have before. The demo of the routing lists and serials, how about if I have that on the agenda for next time? Right now I know I don't have any routing lists set up and I haven't done any testing on it. So I'd like to have a little bit of time to do that first. Anything else? Okay, well, the next meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks from today. That's July 12th, if I'm reading my calendar correctly. I'll try to have the agenda out sooner than I did this time, and we'll have probably more to talk about next week since the Bibliovation Code meeting is tomorrow. And at that time, what I'm going to do my best pull together for you is a summary of the support center tickets that have been entered about the Bibliovation software, so that you have an idea of what kinds of issues are being reported by the public libraries. I think there are a couple of issues that are going to require discussion between the public libraries and all of us. One of them is lost handling. I saw a support center ticket for that that indicates to me that the way that the lost handling is set up right now isn't exactly what they want either. So it will be interesting to see what kinds of issues come up in the meeting tomorrow. If there are no other questions or comments, that's all that I have for today. And I'll get the video on YouTube as soon as I can. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.